Hi, everyone. Welcome to Happy Hour Talks. Today we have a special guest, but we're just going to introduce ourselves like we always do. So I'm Raina.
I'm China.
I'm Jaree.
And I'm Ruth.
And today we're joined by Korben London. He's a sports professional. He works in the NBA with the LA Clippers, and he also has his own podcast. So we're just going to talk about that today. And we're super excited to have you, Korben.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so now that we have you, we just want you to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you went to school and what you studied, that kind of stuff.
Cool. Yeah. As mentioned, my name is Korben London from Charlottesville, Virginia. I went to the University of Maryland where I majored in sports industry and leadership, which is a degree that I actually created myself through our individual studies program. Since then, moved on out here to LA to work for the Los Angeles Clippers as an account manager. So basically what I do is I just manage season ticket holders, and the primary role of my job is revenue retention, right? Every single year, bringing back the money that they spend because the company needs it for, salaries and things like that. So we're in the midst of that period right now. Started in January, and we're still rolling. So work's been tough, but that's why I'm here. And it's been good so far.
How is the transition from moving from the East Coast to the West? Is there a different vibe to the atmosphere?
Yeah, West Coast is definitely different from the East Coast. It's hard to kind of put a finger on it, but I mean, I'm from Virginia, which like some people consider it the South. Like I don't consider it the South, but I have a lot of friends that are from New York and Connecticut. So it's kind of a similar vibe, and things are a little bit slower. People are a little bit nicer, but I had been out here a couple of times before. My brother, he lived in LA for a couple of years, and growing up, I wanted to be just like him. So, I was out here, visiting, but definitely an adjustment. There was an earthquake like my second week being here, which was tough. But other than that, I liked it a lot.
And then going back to your background, you said you created like your major and like what you were studying. So was that process hard? Like when you went to school, did you know you were going to do that? Or did you kind of like figure it out when you got there?
I had no idea, to be honest. I was a high school kid that had a lot going on, outside of the classroom, wasn't the most like motivated academically, had some other things that I was dealing with. So school wasn't my top priority. But when I got there, I learned of this program. I, ran into someone at the cafeteria who had done the same thing. So really what it is that obviously when you go to any school's curriculum page, you go look at the major, it tells you the course load, the description, things like that. I had to just create that for myself, and it was tough. It was tough at first because you can't just walk up there and throw anything you want on paper and they'll let you graduate with it. You kind of had to have a reason behind it. And for me, I grew up, my dad's a football coach, college football coach, and my brother played in the NFL as well. So I've always been around athletes, professional and collegiate, and I've always just been an advocate for them, right? People think it's, an easy life where they see you on TV on Saturdays or on Sundays. And, just because you have a lot of Instagram followers and, things like that, that life is made for you. But behind the scenes, I'd see guys who, would score a touchdown on Saturday, but couldn't afford to get their haircut on Sunday, or they couldn't afford to put gas in their car. So growing up, I've always been, a player first type of advocate. And when I got to school, what I wanted to do was be able to study how athletes can use that platform, use those Instagram followers, those Twitter followers. Now you're seeing TikTok, how they can use that to create social justice or to be leaders in their community or to shed light on issues that maybe people aren't looking at. So it was a unique experience. Being able to go through it, I really enjoyed it. It was hard having to write my own curriculum. I took a mix of business classes, kinesiology class, which is like what the sports arm was, and then public policy, just learning a lot about nonprofits and social impact and how to create social change. So I really enjoyed it. It kind of allowed me to like take my education, head on, and I'm glad that I did it.
Did you have any support while in college? Were you a part of any organizations like NESB, but for business sports major?
No, I mean, I was in the Sports Business Society, which was a club at my school, but Nothing outside that. I'll be the first to tell you guys, I'm not like when it comes to like academics, I'm not the smartest guy, right? I didn't get a 4.0 GPA in college. Like, I wasn't the best at studying. I didn't get straight A's. So I knew that my ticket into the sports world or professional or career was just to have internships. So I always had an internship, whether it was with the athletic department or with the sports agency. I lived in New York City for a summer working for a sports marketing company. So I knew that was my ticket, right? School didn't come easy to me. And once I learned that I could have experience to help get me to the next level and get me to where I wanted to go, I kind of turned my focus on that.
Now, did you like tailor your resume a certain way to get these internships, or did you network?
Networking, for sure. Definitely networking, meeting as many people as I can. Fortunately, with my father and brother and the careers that they do, doors, naturally opened up for me in some cases. So mainly networking. That's the biggest advice that I give when people reach out to me is don't be afraid to send the Instagram DM or the Twitter DM or the LinkedIn message, whatever it is. Like they may not answer ever, or they may leave you on red, and they may make you like, feel a little upset about that. But at the end of the day, a lot of my, internships and things like that I were able to land were because of those messages. And that's the biggest advice, like I said, that I give is like, just shoot your shot, shoot your shot, and you never know, what'll come from it.
Did you ever feel nervous, like reaching out to people because of like your family's background? Like, did you ever feel like people were going to judge you just because like your dad is pretty well known?
I wouldn't say nervous, but I do have like a chip on my shoulder, I'd say, because I never wanted to be hired because of that. I never wanted someone to take the phone call because of it. And in all my interviews, all those conversations, it's like I can't hide from the fact what the people before me have done. But my goal, my why, my motivation is to be, when you think of the last name London, not to think of those two, but to think of me. So nervous, no, but I didn't like going into those conversations when people are like, oh, like you're Coach London's son, like here, you don't have to interview. It's like, no, let me earn it first. Let me tell you about me. Let me tell you about my experience. And then let's talk about whether or not I'll land it.
I like that a lot. So why the Clippers? So you had an internship in New York. How did you end up in LA?
So my senior year of college, so I went to the University of Maryland, and in the Washington, D.C. metro area are the Washington Wizards, the Washington Nationals, the Capitals, and they have their company is called the Monumental Sports and Entertainment Company, right? The owner, he owns all those teams, and they put on a sales like workshop. It was on a Sunday at like 8 a.m, and it was teams from all around the league were there, and you learn about the sales process, you do competition, then at the end you had an opportunity to interview with these teams. So I thought it was a no-brainer. I never sold anything in my life, so I was like, I might as well check this out. Be able to see if I can do well. And then at the end, like I said, they were interviews, so you had the opportunity to interview with the New York Knicks, the Mets, some of the 76ers, some of these teams that were there. So I put on a suit, and what I'm saying, I got my hair cut. Like I did all the things that I could do to like make me feel confident and make me feel ready to compete against other people. And I did well during the workshops. I won one of the competitions that they had, and I interviewed at the end with the New York Knicks for a sales position, and I made it to the second round. And I was like, wait a second, like the interview process wasn't that hard, because doing what I do in sales is you don't have to do equations, you don't have to do math or anything like that. It's just more so your ability to communicate with people, your ability to build relationships. And I did very well in that interview. So at that point, I was like, all right, like maybe this is something that I can do. And then began the LinkedIn search, where I'm just looking on LinkedIn, seeing jobs, and one for the Clippers popped up. And I was like, oh, okay, let me check it out. I've been to LA, I wanted to try to see if I could dip my toe in the water. So I applied. I got the initial, phone screening interview, and they're like, hey, like we're having group interviews, but this was before COVID. We're having these group interviews, but they're in person. I understand that you live on the East Coast. Like we don't really pay to fly people out. So like, if you're serious about this job, obviously maybe we'd have to, work together to see how you can interview. And I was like, nah, don't worry about it. I'm actually going to be in LA during the same time as the interview. so I can just stop by. That was a total lie. Totally made that up. I booked the plane ticket. I booked the hotel right across the street from the office and made it seem like, oh yeah, no, don't worry. Like, I'm already going to be there. You know, my cousin, I'm going there for a wedding, and it just so happens at the same time, perfect timing. And like I said, I didn't do that. I bet on myself. I booked the ticket in the hotel, and I came out. I interviewed, and I flew back the next day. And when I landed, I got the phone call saying that, you know, I was offered the job. And at that point, I had gotten the job with the Knicks already, and then I had the job with the Clippers as well. And it kind of came down to how I felt about each organization. Honestly, what led me to the Clippers was it's a very diverse organization. Our president is a female. My bosses were Black women, and my manager now is an Asian man. Like all these things like that. So I really felt comfortable being around a lot of different types of people, opposed to the other place. We'll just say everybody looked the same there. So it kind of led to my decision. That's the biggest factor, I'd say, was just the people at the organization.
Were you nervous with COVID impacting the sports industry? I know the NBA had the bubble. Were you afraid of like your job position or starting in general?
Yeah, very, very, very frightened. So I got the job in January, and then I was supposed to start when I graduated in June. But March is when COVID hit, and my manager was like, "Hey, listen, like you still have your job, but like we don't know, right? We don't know what's going on. We're not playing any games. We're in the bubble. We don't need to hire anyone right now because we can barely pay for the people that we got." So instead of starting in June, I had to wait June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February. Finally, I started up in February. And during that 8-month period, I was just at home. I graduated college. I was, living with my parents. It was COVID. And, when you live with your parents, obviously, you want to be safe. My grandparents lived down the street. I grocery shopped for them. So I was pretty isolated, for that 8-month period. And it was hard, because I put all this work in, all this effort in leading up to my senior year of college. I finally booked the gig. I'm moving to LA. Like, it's going to be right at the beginning of summer. Like, I'm going to graduate college, and the next week I'm gone, and nothing happened. And that was tough. It was a tough 8-month period, but I stuck with it. I kept reaching out to my manager every probably 2-3 months saying, "Hey, hope things are going well. I'm still interested. Please keep me in the loop." And, luckily the position stayed open. One of the things with the Clippers, Steve Ballmer is our owner. He's, rich guy that started at Microsoft, and the Clippers were like one of the only sports teams in the NBA that didn't lay anyone off during the pandemic. He wanted to take care of his people. So I was lucky enough to where they were still hiring and they wanted, me to still join. So I ended up joining February 8th was my first day, which is, a year ago, 2-3 weeks ago, whatever it is.
Do you work from home, or is like a hybrid setting? And how is your work-life balance?
So I worked from home. So when I started in February, we didn't go back into the office until a couple months ago, I'd say. And they kept pushing it back. It was supposed to be, March and April. And you guys know during COVID, like you never know what's going on. And they pushed it back. And they finally brought us back to the office, I'd say probably about 2 months ago. We were doing a hybrid, Monday, Wednesday schedule. But then now that we're in our renewal period, which is, like I said, the revenue retention part where we're basically calling people and asking for their money back. We've been in the office 4 days a week, grinding, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., whatever it is, because it's tough, right? That's what you're judged on. It's all numbers based, and every single morning our numbers get sent out so the whole company can see. So it's been tough, but work-life balance has been tough to manage. I'd say, when I was strictly remote, and this is how I was able to start my podcast. When I was strictly remote, you had 8 hours in a day, and realistically you could do it however you wanted, right? The position that I'm in now as an account manager, I wasn't in that at first. I got promoted to that position. At first I was what's called an inside sales rep, where you just cold call all day and you try to make sales, and then how well you do at that determines if you get promoted to a position that I'm in now. And we had to make 120 phone calls a day. That was like our minimum benchmark. And if you wanted to get recognized, if you wanted to show people that you mean business, you make 130 or 140 or 150. So I would just lock in, sit at my desk at 8:30, make 50 phone calls, and don't look at my phone, don't check emails, take lunch, do whatever, and then make the rest of my calls. But it was nice because like I could go to the gym during the day. And if I was at 60 calls by 2 o'clock, like I'm good. Like I'm gonna run to the gym, I'm gonna go to the grocery store, stuff like that. But ever since we went back into the office, work-life balance has been tough. I like to go to the gym. I haven't been to the gym in a month and a half, 2 months since we went back 4 days. Because I'm at work all the time. I come home at 6 o'clock tired. I gotta wake up at 7 a.m. and be there the next morning. So it has been tough going from working strictly from home and trying to stay productive, now going back to the office. I'm still figuring it out, to this day. I was just thinking about, before I jumped on, like when am I going to work out this week? If I can't work out, at least I go on a run. You know what I'm saying? Like there's things like that. So I have no answer for it. I'm still trying to, figure it out and get better at it.
And I think we're all trying to do that. So I think the fact that like you're self-aware and you want to get back to like yourself, like pre being in the office, it's just like start. So that's really cool. But you did bring up your podcast, so we just wanted to talk about that a little bit. So with that starting in Corona, was that something you had always wanted to do and then COVID hit and it was like, oh, this is perfect opportunity? Or was it like already in the works and then you kind of just had to do it remotely?
Nah, so to be honest, I didn't really think of the idea till about like 2 weeks before my first episode. And I've been in LA. It was COVID. I was working from home. My job was a grind, right? Like I wasn't seeing the success that I wanted. I wasn't necessarily second guessing myself, but like I started to get a little homesick. I started to get like, am I really out here for a reason? Is this really for me? Being this far away from home, LA County, super locked down. Like you couldn't do anything, go anywhere. So it wasn't like I was out willy-nilly having a good time. Like it was just so different than what I expected. And I started to get down from like a mental health type of space. Cause everyone kind of had a tough time in their own different way in the pandemic. So I have a lot of pressure. I put a lot of pressure on myself to like succeed, do well, get the promotion or be first. And I wasn't able to do that during that time. So instead of letting it get to me, I kind of decided, all right, well, I haven't made it yet, right? I still have a long way to go. Let me talk to some people who also haven't made it yet, but are a lot further along than I am. And that's kind of the premise of where I got it from, is just, I talked to people who hadn't made it in their careers yet, who weren't 40 and had the Ferrari out front, the big house, and the husband and the wife and the 5 kids. Like I didn't want to talk to those people. I wanted to more so interact with people who had seen some success, but had also seen some failures and aren't at the top or aren't where they wanted to go. And I just put it together because I knew that by listening to them, I would gain more valuable insight than talking to my dad or my uncle or my college, whatever, who were like, just work hard and stick it through and everything will be fine. No, I wanted like real advice. I wanted to have real conversations about being homesick, managing work-life balance, managing your social life, right? Being able to go out and, things like that, how to budget your money, just all type of things that, I was going through at that moment. And I just decided to record it. I was just like, what, if I'm going to have these conversations, I might as well listen to them. I might go back and listen to it later on down the line. Maybe like my kids one day will listen to it, or there's someone else like me. And I knew I wasn't the only one who was feeling it. So I knew that there was other people like me out there that maybe would benefit. And I never did it to get famous or to have 1,000 views or anything like that. I could care less if I got one viewer every single episode and it was my mom. That was never about that for me. But I just know that one day I hope that people stumble across it, see the person I'm interviewing or listen to a piece and can pull something from it. Because I don't claim to know everything, or I don't claim to, make the most money or be the most successful. Like, I'm not that. And I think that's one thing people focus on too much, is being that guy or flexing and putting on a lifestyle that's more than what you actually have. I kind of wanted to just provide like a real outlook on what I was going through and what other people were going through. And it kind of, went from there.
How did you come up with the name Taking Lunch with Korben London? Is it just like chopping it up with friends? Yeah.
Yeah, I say just chopping. I mean, realistically, I realized that because I was working from home, these conversations I'd have to have probably on my lunch break. And I would tell people like, hey, like I'm basically free all day, like 8 to 5 LA time. And then sometimes I, reach out to people on the East Coast. So I was like, hey, I'm free all day. You pick the time and then I'll just structure my lunch break around that. So I'll eat and then I'll do the interview. So that's how the idea started. Now is every episode filmed on my lunch break? No, that isn't the case. I'm fraudulent in that space. But yeah, it just during COVID, everyone's working from home. You tell me you're ready at 2:00, I'll just take my hour break from lunch at 2:00 and film this episode. And then because I'm working from home, I'll just eat while I work and just take bites in between phone calls. So I didn't really have traditional lunch breaks. I would just use that time to record and things like that.
Are you going to start your podcast back up, or because you've been so busy, you haven't had the time to do so?
Yeah, once I kind of got back into office, it made it tough to be able to film episodes. Me being on the West Coast, obviously, between 8:30 and 5:30 Pacific time, I can't interview anyone because I'm in the office, and I could start doing more weekends. So yeah, it just got to a point in my career where I kind of leveled up, where I got promoted, and I needed to kind of change my mindset and change my level of thinking. So in order to provide more value for the podcast, I needed to kind of focus on myself a little bit and learn about my mistakes and learn about what I was going through and goal setting and things like that. So I haven't recorded an episode in a couple of months now. It's coming back. Obviously it's something that I'm gonna stick with. Work just got in the way a little bit, and because I'm not doing it to like make money and be rich and be famous, I had to worry about what's going to pay my bills first. But it's definitely something that every single day, if I see people on Instagram, I'll save their profile as someone that I want to reach out to. And I'm looking forward to starting it back up. This is my first time being on like the other side of it, and being the one that has to talk and do the interviewing. But it is cool to just talk to someone who you don't really know, and just see how they're thinking. It's nice to learn that everybody's normal, just like everybody else.
And I like the fact that you said that, because like specifically, I might be busting up his name, but I think it was like the Michael Christmas episode. He was just kind of like saying how he literally got to start like selling shirts at like a concert and stuff, and just like going on from there. So I like the fact that everyone you choose really like was hustling, and like that's how they got to where they were, because that's like you said, that's what you're trying to do, when what you are doing, not trying to do. But as far as like the people you've had on your podcast, you've had artists, you've had content creators, things like that. Is there anyone that you're thinking about trying to get on? Because I know, like you said, you're saving profiles on Instagram all of the time. So is there like a type of guest that you haven't had that you really want to have like in the coming seasons?
That's a good question. I mean, to be honest, if you guys were to see my Instagram DMs, I'd probably DM like 150 people to join. And like some of them are like long shots, like no way that they would ever want to come join. And some, like I said, leave me on red, and some respond. So that's a good question. I'm not looking for an exact type of person, but one thing I don't want it to be is like too sports saturated. I want there to be music. I want there to be, entertainment, artists, all types of things. And a lot of that is just me branching out in my networking space, because obviously I'm in sports, so my main contacts are in sports. But the last thing I wanted was to be a sports podcast. I want anybody to be able to listen to it. So I want to get someone on there who maybe has a clothing line that they've started up, or someone who started up their own app, things like that. So really just diversifying. I don't really have like a big criteria. I'm not like, you got to have a blue check and 50,000 followers. That doesn't really matter to me. Just figuring out ways that I can provide value to as many different types of people that I can.
And that's just cool because it widens like the demographic of your listener. So it's cool that you're trying not to make it so heavily focused on sports. So that's cool.
Going a little bit back to the sports, what's the most like coolest moment so far working with the Clippers, or like the biggest highlight so far?
I'd say in the playoffs, this past summer. So the Clippers, obviously, when you think of like LA basketball, obviously the Lakers are the big team in town. Everyone's favorite team is the Lakers, and the Clippers have never really won anything ever. And up until last year, we had never been to the Western Conference Finals. We'd always gotten knocked out of the playoffs right before then. We've always had great teams with Chris Paul and Blake Griffin and all these guys, but the Clippers had never made it. And, it gotten to a point last season where our star player got hurt, Kawhi Leonard, he was out, but it was game 6. It was a home game. And if we won the game, we would go on to the Western Conference Finals. If you won the Western Conference Finals, then obviously an NBA championship. And I was there. I had to work the first half. I was selling season tickets at a table, in the concourse. And after I was done, I was able to go sit in the crowd and watch the game. And I witnessed Clippers basketball history because they had never made it that far ever. So the whole arena was on their feet. They had handed out these shirts. So everyone was wearing the blue shirt that had the playoffs on it. And we won, and the confetti fell and everyone was going crazy. So that was the coolest moment thus far, I'd say. Is the first part of the game I was working, and the second part I was able to kind of see the action. So this season's been a little tough. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, our star players, they have been hurt the entire year. If they weren't hurt, we would probably be one of the best teams in the NBA. We have a legitimate shot to go to the Western Conference Finals again and the NBA Finals and potentially win it all. Those are all realistic, expectations, but they are not playing and our team isn't doing as well. So I probably won't have any earth-shattering, groundbreaking, lifelong memories made this season. But the ones I've had thus far have been pretty cool.
What advice do you have for people who might want to be where you're at? Do you have any websites that you were using to find positions? I know you said LinkedIn, but maybe specific sports websites or bulletins that people look out for? And do you have any type of entry-level position titles or departments that you can recommend?
Yeah, so for me, LinkedIn obviously is huge for these type of things. And the other one is, it's called Teamwork Online. It's where teams, professional sports teams, will post their listings on it. But I just searched LinkedIn. I put in sports and then LA, and then it came up. And then to get into sales is not very hard, to be honest with you, in terms of finding opportunities, because for the most part, every team in the NBA, the NFL, MLB has what's called inside sales, which is, you're part-time, right? You make minimum wage. You don't get any benefits. You aren't a full-time employee. Holidays aren't paid. Did I mention that you don't make any money, and you have to make 120, 30, 40, 50 calls? A lot of teams have that. And that's just kind of where I started. In the interview process, you don't have to have selling experience, right? You don't have to go to college for it. You could be a history major. You could be a Spanish major or whatever it is. And you'd be able to get into it. And all it really comes down to is, your ability to relate and communicate and be a people person to work in sales. So if you are someone that isn't afraid to talk to a stranger, isn't afraid to, if someone's walking by that you've never met, say something, then it might be for you. And that was just me kind of growing up, kind of my personality. I was, never afraid, like I said, to sit with the new person at lunch, or go find the new group who are at the bar, and I want to meet new friends. That stuff never. I was never afraid of that stuff, so that's why I was able to do well. So if you're someone, like I said, that likes to talk, likes people, it's not hard to get your foot in the door. But once your foot's in the door, you got to work. You got to grind. It's not easy to stay, right? Making 125, 50 phone calls a day is hard when 100 of them probably aren't answering. You're leaving voicemails, and the 10 that do answer hang up on you. And then the 5 that you do get to talk to, they can't do it because they got to wait till their wife or their husband gets home to make a decision. They never call you back, or they don't have the money for it. And you do have those 1 or 2 that buy, and it makes you feel good. But those other 100 and whatever, it can get to your head. And there's a lot of ups and downs, right? You may be hot, right? Make a couple sales, you're doing well, you're getting recognized by your managers and your peers. And there may be some weeks where nobody's picking up the phone and you aren't putting out, as much work as you want to. And I think that's what makes it tough. So once you're in it, like I said, it's not the easiest thing, but it's definitely doable. If you go in with the right mindset, confidence, and just willing to work hard and know that it's temporary. And that's one of the things that was for me. It was our program. Most programs for inside sales, like 8 to 12 months. I wanted to get promoted by 8 months. That was my goal. So I knew that like it wasn't always going to be like this. It wasn't always going to be that hard, that frustrating, whatever it is. So I just use that as my motivation of this is only temporary. What's permanent will be when you make it past this, you get promoted, you're full time, you get benefits, like you get paid more, things like that. That was kind of what I was searching for. So if you're someone that can understand that it's not going to be easy, that you're going to have bad days, you're going to have slow days, you'll have good days, but just a whole mixed bag of it, then I recommend getting into it. And it's definitely something that'll test you. But I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to call the right people at the right times to make those sales and get myself to where I am now.
So since you did get promoted so quickly, now that you're moving up in the company, have you thought about like transitioning to a different department at all? Because you are a creative person. So have you ever been like, I kind of want to go on like the marketing side or like just like doing stuff for social media? So like, have you ever thought about that or just like how you could incorporate like Clippers work with taking lunch?
Not yet. I got promoted in June, and I'm an account manager is my position, but within my team, there are still levels to go. So the next step is to be a premium account manager, and what that is you manage the premium seats, right? My book of business is like I think around like $2 or $3 million, but if you're a premium rep, it's $5 or $6 million, and you're dealing with law firms and banks and hospitals and these big companies. I'm not there yet. I haven't had those clients, and that's kind of what's next for me in that space. And obviously after that is you go to courtside, and then that's when you're managing $200,000 accounts. Like Floyd Mayweather comes to our games all the time. Like my buddy that I work with, Brian, him and Floyd Mayweather are friends because he's like his account manager. So there's levels to it, and I guess I'm not a very patient person, but I'm trying to be. So before I start thinking about other opportunities within the company, I kind of want to work my way up with what's in front of me right now.
Any other advice you would like to give people trying to get into sports, especially for an introvert who is not very vocal?
Yeah, like I said, the biggest thing is just reaching out to people and not being afraid to put yourself out there. I'd say now, because at the end of the day, like a message, it may go like the worst thing that can happen is you get left on red, right? And yeah, it hurts, but you know what you do? You copy that same message, you change the name, and you change the little filler sentence, whatever it is, but 98% of it's still the same, and you send out to 5 more people. That's what I do. That was my secret sauce, was create a generic message and then change the name of the person, change the company, change like a little blurb about why I wanted to work for the company or talk to that person. But all the other stuff was the exact same. And I would just fire that out 5, 10, 15, 20. I get a rejection, I send out 5 more. And that's what ended up working for me. Winding my search, I was never the type of person to see one thing or one person and go all in on it. I just kind of cast my net as wide as I could so that whatever I caught, I'd have the opportunity to make the most of it. So if you're an introvert or you're not someone that, and on first conversation, your personality comes out, you're a little shy, hide behind your phone, hide behind your computer, send those messages out first, create the conversation back and forth. That'll make you more comfortable so that when it is time for that phone call, you've already talked to the hiring manager, the HR person, or whatever it is. You've already had communication with them.
And then I know like it's kind of on pause just for the moment, but since you are thinking about taking lunch back, is there anything you hope to do in the future as far as like maybe in-person meetups now that like COVID restrictions are kind of like falling down like a little bit? Would you ever want to meet with your guests in person and try to make it like a group, like setting, like possibly interviewing multiple people at once? Or is it just kind of like, we'll see what happens when I relaunch?
No, absolutely. I mean, it's a little bit of both. Obviously, like when I relaunch, which will probably be around the summer, I'll see what happens. But I do want to take it up a notch, right? I want to be able to meet people in person. I'm not like much of a vlogger or anything like that, but I do want to film more content like behind the scenes. And it's kind of one of those things where I just want it to come naturally. I don't really want to force it and be like, all right, I'm gonna film a day in the life of an account manager at the LA Clippers. Like, that's not what I want to do. But being able to saying, hey, Raina, I want to come interview you. Where do you live here in LA? All right, cool. I'm gonna bring my computer. I'm gonna bring my microphone, and we'll just set up at your house. Or is there a coffee shop that you like nearby? Just trying to make it as convenient as possible, for them. But I am excited once I can kind of put some more thought to it, figuring out a way to make it exciting and to make it unique and something that people would click on, whether it's a YouTube video, a TikTok, the Spotify, link to the page, whatever it is, just making people want to click.
Okay, I think that might be it, unless anyone else has questions for Korben. No? Okay. Korben, can you just tell us like where we can find you, where people can follow you on social media?
Absolutely. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram, just at Korben London. Pretty easy in my bio. It's a link to my podcast as well. If anyone's listening and they have questions about sports, sales, podcast, just shoot me that DM. Right? Like I said, I preach, reaching out to people. If someone reaches out to me, I mean, I'd be happy to have that conversation. So you can find me on Instagram. I'm not really active on Twitter, but at Korben London on Instagram if you need to reach me.
Well, thank you for sitting down with us, and we're really excited to see where everything goes.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys having me.
See ya.